The battleship USS Arizona, or BB-39, is probably best known for her tragic destruction at Pearl Harbor, as well as remaining a permanent memorial to the lives lost on that day. However, she did have a lengthy career prior to her untimely death, and one particular incident stands out as a little bit unique. In March of 1924, a woman who went by the name Madeline Blair wound up stowing away on board the battleship in an attempt to get to California. However, she was discovered a little over halfway through the journey, and the sailors involved were court-martialed as a result of the scandal. Madeline Blair was not actually her real name based on most sources. She was born Adelaide Andrews, though she tended to go by Madeline Blair instead. She also had several nicknames, like Jackie or Blackie, the latter of which was due to the fact that she was a brunette with very dark eyes. She was 19 years old in March of 1924, and she was working as how can I phrase this in a way that won't cause YouTube to instantly demonetize this video? Lady of the Night. Yes, that is the phrase that I am going to go with. And if you don't know what that means, you are too young to be watching this video, so I highly recommend you go off and maybe trade some Pokemon cards, or play with some Legos, or really do anything but watch this, as you don't need to know what a Lady of the Night tends to do for to make a living, shall we say. USS Arizona was part of the United States 4th Fleet at the time, and she was anchored in the North River near Manhattan, New York. Some of the sailors stationed on board Arizona were given shore leave, and that's when they met Madeline Blair, as they had taken her up on her particular, offerings. Yes, that is the word I'm going with. She informed them that she actually wanted to go to Hollywood to become a movie star, which is a common enough dream, and it's usually a lot more difficult than that, but she really wanted to try, and Lord knows her current situation wasn't exactly the best, but she didn't have enough money for a fare to go across the country. But at the time, Arizona was due to set sail to California, so the sailors decided to smuggle her on board the ship. To accomplish this, they had her cut her hair very short, and they gave her a uniform cap and coat. She was snuck on board by keeping her in a group of sailors and letting her feign drunkenness, so no one would pay her too much attention, and they were able to stow her safely away in an unused generator compartment. And while she was safely out of sight, well, they couldn't exactly go to California in a day. What was she gonna eat? Well, the sailors talked to some of the cooks on board, and were able to get them to agree to provide her with meals for about $10 a day. Now that's in 1924 money, and adjusting for inflation that's nearly $180. Why were the cooks charging so much? Well, it's because they were taking a very big risk by doing that. Pilfering food is considered a pretty egregious offense, and if they were going to take such a risk at getting caught, they were going to get their money out of it. But Blair was able to pay them because she decided to practice her, trade on board the Arizona at a rate of $3 per interaction. Man, this is difficult. That's about $55 in today's money. Since the ship's crew did consist of about 1,300 male sailors, and she was a young, attractive woman who had certain skills, and thus she wound up being able to pay for plenty of food, including chocolate, fruit, and other assorted things. So she was fairly comfortable at first. However, as Arizona moved further south, the weather changed, getting much warmer, and that meant that Madeline's compartment was getting uncomfortably hot. She had to stay there during the day, but at night she needed to give herself some relief, so she snuck up on deck while it was dark. This went fine at first, but one evening she was allowed to watch a movie from a searchlight platform that was being played for the sailors, and one of the crewmen, who didn't actually know her, found he didn't have a light for his cigarette, and he took it upon himself to reach into her breast pocket for some matches, as it was very normal for sailors to keep their matches there, and this wasn't an uncommon practice for them to just reach over and grab each other's matches on occasion. But he wound up finding something, a part of the female anatomy, that he didn't mean to find, and he was somewhat deeply alarmed by this. He didn't rat her out at first, though later he did inform the ship's officers. But Madeline got away this time because they dismissed it as completely absurd. I mean, how could someone just sneak on board a United States battleship, of all things? Come on, don't be ridiculous, man. They passed through the Panama Canal on April 12th, and Arizona was hanging around Balboa at the time, preparing for the final leg of her voyage to California. And this is where Madeline made a pretty big mistake. See, she'd gotten bolder, and she knew she was almost to her destination, so she chose to stay on deck until the break of dawn, and before going back down to her hiding place, she stopped to have a drink of water, and was noticed by the chief radio operator. In the lights, she was easily identifiable as a woman and not a member of the crew, so he immediately reported her to the deck officer. This time a search was mounted, and she was discovered, though she refused to name the sailors who had actually smuggled her onto the ship, and she was still focused on getting herself to California. She tried to delay things by claiming that there were other women on board, causing the crew to waste more time searching the ship for other stowaways, though they found nothing, and Blair was sent ashore in Balboa and left there. The authorities there weren't really sure what to do with her, and she wound up taking a ship, the SS Cristobal, back to New York, first class, and had the US Navy billed for the fare. And as far as the Arizona's repercussions are concerned, well, the Navy was ridiculously upset by the whole situation. This was, of course, not something that they expected their sailors to do, nor was it something that they would tolerate. The captain of the Arizona, Captain Olmsted, instigated courts-martial for 23 enlisted men, and sentences that were up to 10 years imprisonment were imposed. Admiral Henry A. Wiley personally issued a letter of reprimand to all the officers on the ship, and that included future Admiral and Chief of Naval Operations R. Burke, who was at the time only an ensign. But later on in 1930, a different admiral, William V. Pratt, actually stepped in as he felt that the penalties imposed for the incident, while it was understandable that the parties were found guilty, seemed really excessive. Like 10 years for smuggling a woman on board, that seems a little ridiculous. So when he became Chief of Naval Operations, he ordered the reprimands stricken from the officers' records, and he tried to get the courts-martial of the enlisted men overturned, but unfortunately he failed to do this, and they had to serve their sentences. As for Madeline, well, her trail goes pretty cold after this incident. She published her story in the American Weekly Magazine section of the San Francisco Examiner in 1928, indicating that she did eventually make it to California at some point, but nothing else about her after that is known. Therefore, she probably didn't actually achieve her dream of becoming a famous movie star. Though she would at least leave a small legacy behind in terms of this story, so that's something, I suppose. And with that, a special thank you goes to all my underwater train finders: Somedude267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Panzer Kitchen 131-232, Josh Johnson, Metal for Life Guy, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Tommy Rossini, Lord Captain Von Thrust III, Brian, Jack Carson's Rare Videos, Hayden DeGrow, Master of None, Lord Off 444, Mark Holding, Murder Drones Doll, A Person 723, DM Tribal Typhoon, Alfonso Lapuche, Ro Hudson 2860, Icer for 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matthew Wolf, Mr. Sleepy, Matt Weaver, Albert Jaspers, Tom Redlion, NS Productions 8104, Hannah Bird, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues, Greyhounds, Dr. Racer 78, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Ohio Trucker 1, and Joshua Long. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.